Like, what a chapter, what an arc in this story of Cassian, man. It is... I was shook after watching last night's episodes. Spoilers, obviously. We'll wait for a few people to tune in. And I'm sure if you guys are regular viewers, you'll be questioning, where the hell am I? I am currently visiting my parents. But that does not mean I stop working. So I am in my childhood bedroom, and we are talking about Star Wars. Like last night with Andor, there are very few moments in any movie or show I watch where I am deeply moved by what I'm watching. You know, there's times where I really enjoy a movie, where I'm just thoroughly entertained, or I'm impressed by the production value, or just a storytelling feat that whatever happened just happened. But what happened last night with Andor, especially with episode 8, because episode 9 was the more standard, excellently written drama, while episode 8 was just so real and drew perfectly from history, and it was so haunting is the word I like to use. You know, just something that is so well done that it, you know, just makes you sick. It's like, man, like, it's so conflicting because you know how well written this is, and you're happy to see something as well written as this, but it also just makes you sick to your stomach because what's being portrayed is so terrible. Let's go to the chat. General Cheese says, Andor is absolute cinema and one of the top 5 Star Wars projects ever made. Yeah, I think I would be lying to myself, and I've never said this before. I think I'd be lying to myself if I said that any of the Star Wars movies were as well written as this arc of Andor. Wedge Odyssey says, we are the gore the galaxy is watching. It's like, there's so much weight behind those words and so much eventual pain that it's so sad. Jace says, yo, what's up, Jace? No prequel memes allowed. Says, everyone's upset that Bix left Cassian. I'm mainly happy that Bix was able to get out. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, and I think I said that last week. I was like, I bet you if anyone were to survive, it's going to be Bix. And I wonder how much of Bix we're going to see next week. We'll have to see her eventually. I wonder if it'll be in an epilogue or not. But of course, her goodbye message was just a tearjerker, and I don't even know where to start, like, with this whole arc. I guess we can start with episode 7, then 8, then 9. As Krennic would say, no notes. Yes. Lorax Lover says, Big Dog, what's up? Death Sheep says, I teared up when they started singing. Yeah, man. It's so hard to watch that. It just really is. Manveer says, Andor made people cry. Yeah, it made me cry. And that rarely happens. Like, it really rarely happens that a story makes me tear up. And I was just so stunned by episode 8 and 9, really. Especially at the end of 9. But mostly the end of 8. Rashav says, hey, Goldman, how are you doing? I'm doing well. I'm just in shock, kind of, that Star Wars is this good. Like, is considering how bad the Disney Plus shows have been, that we got 3 episodes that are some of the best storytelling I've ever seen. And I try to convince my friends who aren't big Star Wars fans to watch this show, and they're probably like, oh, you know, the Goldman is just big Star Wars, of course he's going to recommend it. And I struggle because I want them to understand, like, I love The Mandalorian, it's not as good as this. Like, nothing is as good as this. Like, this is some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen. And I want people to understand that, but they can't without actually watching the show and giving it a chance. Death Sheep says, from the valley to the highlands, we are the gore. Oh my god, man. It's just like, I read these lyrics, and it's just so hard. It's so tragic. It's like, because what this show did excellently, and this was clearly the point of last week's arc, because I don't think last week's arc was the best or the greatest, but what it did do excellently was develop the Gorman people. Because if you want the Gorman Massacre in episode 8 to actually hit as hard as it does, you need to develop these people, right? If episode 8 was the first time we met the Gorman people and we saw them get slaughtered, it would be powerful still, but it wouldn't be as powerful. We want to actually learn the culture in these people. And the fact that the Gorman people are just kind of like artists in a way. You know, that's what they said their main export was, the silk from the spiders, I believe. And, you know, they're cultured people. They have their own songs and rituals. And then to just see them slowly but surely lose their autonomy, to lose their rights, to be abused, and then to see them protest that and then fall into the cruel imperial trap and see them just get slaughtered. I mean, it's just really hard to see. Like, this is what's happening, or what's happened and happening in real life. That there are innocent people out there that just get slaughtered. And I think that's why this show resonates so much, is because we know Star Wars and its parallels to the past, especially with World War II. But when you just read things on a paper, like when you think of like the Holocaust from World War II, and you just read 7 or 6 million Jews died, like, it doesn't actually hit home. You know, it's so hard to envision true terror. And what the Gorman Massacre did, it just helps us, you know, people who are comfortable sitting in our living rooms watching a TV show. It helps us understand the true horrors of human beings and what they've done. And we're just seeing an interpretation of that in Star Wars. And just like, I don't know, there's just like innocent people, you know, just standing there, just get shot and they're just on the ground dead. And then seeing the K2 droids, or the KX droids, like K2SO in his previous form, he's just picking up innocent people and just throwing them 20 feet in the air, and then they're dead. The way this show depicts loss of life, or this arc depicts loss of life, was just so haunting. It was so haunting. Tingarwa? Eddie crying broke me. She was a single mom who raised Lieutenant Little. He loved her. He visited her, gave her gifts, and all she did was worry about him and name the gifts after him to remind herself of him. Yeah, that was tough. And we'll get to Cyril in a bit. But so episode 7 was just entirely built up. Let's talk about this a bit more in depth. And I want to talk about specific plot points. Because episode 7 kind of was just building up the tension that, okay, you know, things have gone much worse since we saw last week's arc, and now they're actually boiling over. And then in episode 8, you know, we actually get the massacre and how it was planned from the Imperials. And I love that we just see the reactions from people. You know, I've said this so many times in my videos, that it's not always the actions that's powerful, but the reactions. And, you know, I love that Cyril, a guy who was the epitome of the banality of evil, you know, someone who isn't truly evil, but is so willing to spread evil, to just see him realize that everything he supported has been a lie in a sense. You know, he was with the Empire because he wanted to bring security and justice, right? He wanted justice for those cops in season 1, and he wanted security. That's why he wanted to help thwart rebellion. But when he realizes that that's not what the Empire is trying to do, that's not what Dedra is trying to do, that they're actually trying to find an excuse to slaughter hundreds of people just so they can mine a mineral. Like, I just love the horror on Cyril's face when he's standing there and, like, people are getting slaughtered around him. He's just like, what did I do? Like, he knows he's a part of this. And that was so powerful. And then, of course, it's sad because, you know, he, like, sees Cassian, which is a little coincidental, but he sees Cassian, the kind of the man that started this all, and he just kind of unleashes. And then he dies. It's like, I think a redemption arc would have been a little too cliche for someone like Cyril. But to give Cyril, like, a tease of redemption, but then once he realizes what's wrong, having him killed off by a Gorman that was peaceful, no less. You know, I don't remember the guy's name, but the Gorman that shot Cyril, he was the guy who was advocating for peaceful protests. And he is the one that shoots Cyril in the head. I mean, just, it's tragic, right? That the Gorman people were kind of driven to this. Oisin Malone says, what's your favorite of these 3 episodes? I mean, either episode 8 or 9. Like, I think episode 9 is more entertaining. I mean, the thrill and the tension from Mothmas Escape was truly extraordinary. I just think episode 8 reached an emotional level in me that I haven't seen in Star Wars before, and I've seen very rarely. That I think's only really been captured by documentaries before. Just the true horror of human beings. Cyril was Rice Krispied. Nice one, Light Blindfolded. General Cheese says, I mean, Nemec was right, though. They could hide behind 40 small things like Ferrix, but what would face genuine consequence for Gorman? No doubt Mon's call led to so many join the cause and make it bigger. Yeah, and that means Luthan was right in his mission as well. I loved that Andor, as Oysen, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, said Andor literally says, who are you to Cyril? Yeah, that was like, this was something we discussed 2 weeks ago on my stream 2 weeks ago, where like, we kind of all knew that Cyril and Cassian were going to interact again at some point, but we all wondered, like, does Cassian even remember who Cyril is? And we're like, we know they interacted once, but does Cassian even know, like, remember who Cyril is? And him just saying, who are you, like, confirmed that. So that was a little justification for me, but it's not like it was the most, the hardest thing to predict. It was just a little bit of vindication. Jappel says, sorry I'm late. Dog, I started 10 minutes ago. Don't worry. Side Dish says, how Andor ties into Rebels was so peak. Yeah, I didn't realize that at first, but then after like watching some of these videos, I was like, oh, they're actually tying it into that one episode of Rebels towards the end of season 3, I believe. Jeff Jeezy says, imagine executing a story this well when you know the ending. That is true. Like, again, we know what's going to happen to these characters. Now, I will say there is one instance where knowing the ending actually benefited the scene, and that was with Bix at the end of episode 9, because I'm under the assumption that after episode 9, Bix and Cassian are never going to see each other again. And so Cassian wakes up and Bix is gone, and she says, you know, like, I need you to be focused to the rebellion. Like, we need to win, and once we win, then we can be together. Like, when she said, like, after we win, I'll come find you, I was just like, oh. Like that line, like, I'll come find you, like, that actually, like, got me close to tears. I'm just like, yeah, good job. Because again, the show plays with our knowledge that we know the end game. And it was just like, oh man, so sad. And then Cassian's standing there, and it's like, you know, Bix leaves, and then K2SO joins his life, like, right at the same time. That was well done as well. General Cheese says, I also want to add how good the music was in these episodes. Yeah, honestly, it really was great. Christina says, Cassian saying, who are you to Cyril was the final break of Cyril's reality. Yeah, I can't imagine how Cyril would feel about that. I guess we don't really know. We see his shock. He lowers his blaster, I believe, and then he gets shot in the head. Jappel says, Mon's speech really moved me because of everything going on in the United States. It was just completely perfect. Yeah, it's so... Again, I don't want to get into like modern day politics and where you are, but it is incredible how this show was written, or this season was written 2 years ago. And fair or not, it draws so many parallels to what's going on in politics today. And that's just really impressive. Wedge Honesty says, by having the gore be based on the French, a country that has experienced great prosperity in our own history, it solidifies this show's message that evil comes for all in the end, no matter who you are. I mean, also the French have had some pretty strong suffering too, especially in World War II. And that was kind of more of the analogy I got from the show, but you're not wrong regardless. Pete's Pile O' Brick says, I cried during Bix's message. Yeah, me too. I mean, that is one of the hardest things for me to see. I think there's a handful of things that can really break me in terms of just storytelling, not tropes, but just something you can depict in storytelling. One of them is destroying the innocence of a child, which this show hasn't done. But the other one is just watching someone lose the source of their happiness. Now, it could be done in a cheesy way, like Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, but just seeing Cassian find peace with Bix and want to leave, and then having her leave. Like, I really felt that for Cassian. And Diego Luna did such a good job. Christina says, I want to thank Tony Gilroy for not transferring a B2 emo into K2SO. So many people were predicting that, and I'm so glad he did not go there. Really, I did not. I haven't heard that theory once, but yeah, I wouldn't want that either. I think, correct me, or I want you guys to share your takes on this. But of the entire arc, the one moment, the singular like sequence that really hit home was the Gorman woman, the one that Willman was romantically interested in, when she's giving her message across the radio, and you just hear it over the radio. And I don't know why, and I can't pinpoint on why, but hearing that message transfer across the galaxy over a radio just hit so much harder to me. Because I think it sounds a bit more realistic. Like, we've all heard radio transmissions before, and even some ones that are truly horrifying. And also adds to, like, the desperation from her. I pulled up a YouTube video with the, like, transcript, and she's just like, we're under siege, we're being slaughtered, the imperial murder of Gorman has begun, there are hundreds of bodies this moment. I say, as I say these words, hundreds of murdered Gorman lay dead in Palmo Plaza, thousands more in the streets every minute, we're being destroyed. This is Gorman reaching for any open channel that can hear me. If you can hear me, if you believe in truth, if you have any faith left in truth, please mark this message and pass it forward. This is murder. The Empire built this fire. They made this fire and led us to this slaughter. Now they expect us to die without knowing why the conspiracy we feared is real. It's here today. Imperial ships are landing. Help us. Is there no one who can help us? Is there no one? Just like the desperation behind that speech. Like, even reading that was a little just sad. You know, Andor's had so many good speeches, especially in season 1. And now in this arc, we added Mon Mothma's speech as well. But all those speeches we heard before, whether it be Luthan's, Nemik's, Marva's, Kino's, and Mon Mothma's speeches, like, those are 5 excellent speeches. Those all kind of get you, like, pumped up, right? It's like, yeah, I'm gonna fight back against the Empire. Those were all excellent speeches. And then there was this, that's not so much as a speech, as a message, but the message from the Gorman woman. I mean, that's just sad. Like, that's just really heartbreaking. And it's as powerful in a different way. It's truly sad. You know, just like, we're being slaughtered. Help us. Is there anyone who can help us? Just like the devastation and desperation behind that was just really hard for me to watch. I was like, fuck, man. That was really powerful. That final message to the galaxy speech. Especially after just seeing, you know, the unity from the Gormans. And they were singing their song together. Not even after. I love the transition from We Are the Gore. What's the exact phrase? We are the Gore. The galaxy hears us. God damn it. I should know that. But that was great. But afterwards, you know, the actual song they were singing. And just like, they're proud people and they just got slaughtered. And then just hearing the message, you know, saying, help us, help us. Like, is there anyone who can help us? And then there was the senator in the beginning of episode 9. The dialogue in this show is so good. Where he says, today it's my people, tomorrow it's your people. And like, knowing that the Empire is, oh my god, knowing that Bail Organa, they showed when the Gorman senator was getting arrested, they showed it from Bail Organa's perspective. And when the Gorman senator said, today it's my people, tomorrow it's your people, knowing that Bail Organa's planet's going to get blown up in a year and he's going to die with it. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but like, I have to assume it is because Tony Gilroy was so brilliant. I mean, that was just hard. It's just like, little things like that, it just had so much weight, and it's so sad. I don't think Star Wars has ever, like, depicted anything as devastating as this before. Like, Order 66 doesn't hold a torch to this. Like, maybe Order 66 in the Clone Wars, and because that was so tragic for the clones. But I think this arc for Andor just has so many more realistic parallels that this has happened to so many innocent people so many times throughout history, and it was so tough. It was really tough. DXN says episode 8 right now is breaking records on IMDb for ratings. Yeah, it has a 9.9. That would make it one of the best episodes of TV ever. Oh my god. Oisin says the monster will come for us all. I know that message was that like one line was in one of the trailers for the season, and I'm just like, that speech is going to be a banger. And I want to talk about Mon Mothma a bit, because there's just like two separate parts of this arc that are so excellent. There's the Gorman Massacre, and then there's Mon Mothma's speech. I want to focus a bit more on Gorman right now. Mo says, it took the Empire 3 years to destroy Gorman in a way the public wouldn't fight back against. It took the Death Star seconds to achieve the same thing. It's a great point. I remember back before the season, people were saying, how do we think this show is going to do? Or how do we think this season's going to do handling multiple year time jumps? And we're like, I don't know. We'll see. And I think the show did struggle with that in certain respects, especially with the first and second arcs. Like, we don't ever see those people on Yavin again, and we don't see the ship Cassian stole again. But where it worked was the slow development of the Empire's plan to genocide the Gorman people. Like, we saw the slow progression. Because that just doesn't work if you tell that story in a matter of days. But the fact that it happened over 2 years, essentially, that's what makes it so powerful. Rob says, I am so happy I went into this basically blind after watching season 1. Yeah, man. I would love for... like, in the future, if I ever meet someone that hasn't seen Star Wars, I'll show them the movies first, but not Rogue One. Not Rogue One. And then I'm going to show them Andor first and then Rogue One. And I want to see how they feel about that. Oh my god, I'm so jealous of people. I'm not the biggest Rogue One fan, but I'm so jealous of people who can watch Rogue One for the first time after watching Andor. Oh, I'm so jealous, man. Jeppel says, hey, do you think Cassian will still kill Luthan? I have no clue what's going to happen in this last arc. Like, literally no clue. I know they showed some shots of the Death Star, and I think this arc isn't going to be conclusive. I feel like this is part 1 of like the Rogue One 2-parter, and Rogue One is going to be part 2, if that makes sense. Like, you could theoretically split the actual Rogue One movie into 3 parts and call those episodes 13, 14, and 15 of season 2, and it would work. It just has a bigger budget. Pete says, I think Vel finding the Pre-Mor blaster that Cassian gave to Melshi at Yavin 4 was such a powerful moment that shows how far Cass and her, the only 2 survivors of Aldhani currently, have come. Yeah, I'm not sure if I got that, but maybe I just missed something. But you could be right. One Random Victory says, oh yeah, I avoided the heck out of the trailers. The trailers don't really spoil much, except the fact that the only thing I knew for certain was that we were pretty much going to get the Gorman Massacre in this episode, and that Mon Mothma was going to give a speech. But I have no clue what's going to happen next week. In terms, I don't know if Luthan will die, if Clea will die, what's going to happen to Dedra. So many things. Abdul says, watching Andor after Rogue One makes Rogue One better. Yeah, it's kind of hard not to see that. Wedge Odyssey says, whilst imprisoned in Arcana 5, Cassian shouting, no one's listening, was a moment of hope to fight against the Empire. Contrast that to Season 2 when no one's listening to Gorman's radio message. We don't know if no one was listening, but if you're right, then yeah, that is really sad. Light Blindfold says, we didn't actually see Andor die in Rogue One, no body, no death. Dog, he got burned to smithereens. He's dead. DXN says, now when Cassian says we've all done terrible things, we've given everything we have for the rebellion, that shit's gonna hit differently knowing everything now. But it's not like Cassian did anything bad this arc. It's not like he incited the Gorman Massacre, Jeff Jeezy says, what about Cassian's sister? Yeah, we're never seeing her. I was completely dropped, and I'm kind of fine with it. I love the direction they took this story. So yeah, the Gorman Massacre was just so tough. I mean, Star Wars is classic Star Wars has different standards for storytelling, but in terms of just objective, I don't want to say objective. I just struggle to. Last night's arc was so well written. I think it's the most well written stuff we've ever gotten from Star Wars. Player 7 says, hello from Russia. Thank you for the content. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. General Cheese says, gotta point out how terrifying Serial was when falling apart. Like, he even scared Dedra with how he was acting, and Loki switched the relationship dynamic for the moment after having everything gone. His story was so poignant. I loved it. Just like, and no one's gonna like remember him except his mother. And poor, it's so. That's the other thing. Seeing a parent lose their child is another one of the hardest things you could ever watch. And like, Cyril's mom was the worst, but that was still so hard to watch. Not as hard for me. I still think the highlight of the season was the Gorman Message at the end of episode 8. That was hard. All right, let's touch on Mon Mothma's Escape. And this is where the show continues to impress me, is how they make every moment feel so tense. Like, even Mon Mothma gives the speech. She's giving her speech, right? Powerful speech, by the way. Instead of just, having her give her speech and then the escape starts, like, they're adding extra tension in the fact that the ISB is trying to shut off her message. And it's funny because, like, we hear the message. We're going to hear the message regardless, we as the viewer. But we know how important this is, that there is so much tension about whether or not the ISB is going to shut off her message. And just like things like that, that's how you make scenes take him to a next level. You just add tension where you can, and that's what they did with Mon Mothma's speech. And then, of course, there's the escape, and it's so brilliant. I just love, it was a little jarring at first, but it made sense. It was jarring to see Mon Mothma so uncomfortable with the murder around her. Like, when that one ISB spy got shot by Cassian, she, like, freaked out. And then when her driver got shot, she also was like, oh, no. That kind of took me out. I'm like, really, Mon? It's like, you're part of the rebellion. But then when you think about it, she has, to her, the rebellion has just been words from Luthan and, like, numbers on a piece of paper. Now she's actually seeing it. And just, like, her reaction was really surprising, but it made sense. And, I mean, is there anything I could add about her actual speech? I have it pulled up here. And I love how this show doesn't sugarcoat certain things. There was, like, to revisit the debate from the beginning arc of the season, when they were talking about the assault scene with Bix, and she actually drops the R word. In hindsight, I really appreciate it. They actually are dropping these words. They're not sugarcoating what's happening. And then in this episode with Mon Mothma in episode 9, she says, like, unequivocally, what's going on here is genocide. Unprovoked genocide. They're not alluding to things. They're showing it. They're saying it. And I think that just adds the power to it, because these aren't things we've heard in Star Wars before. I don't know if we ever actually heard them say genocide in Star Wars. But maybe in a book or something. I can't recall off the top of my head. But yeah, they actually are saying these things, and it adds so much weight to all of that. Yeah, like what took place yesterday, what happened yesterday on Gorman was unprovoked genocide. Yes, genocide. And that truth has been exiled from this chamber. And I just love, like, the monster line. And the monster screaming the loudest, the monster we've helped create, the monster who will come for us all soon enough, is Emperor Palpatine. It's like mic drop. Of course, it's, like, convenient that the ISB shuts off the power right when she finishes her speech, but still, it was so great. All right, let's go to the chat. During the flyaway from the Senate building, they played the past-present suite from season 1, episode 3, during Cassian's flyaway from Ferrix and Baby Cass from Kenari. I did notice that. The Vid Game Junkie says they have with Mandalore. No? Did they? Like, I could be wrong. I don't recall it. No, it's been said before, man. Oh, okay. Robot Shlomo says, I'm one of those who hasn't completely bought into Andor. They took forever to show anything interesting. This entire season could have been condensed down to a few episodes. I think in hindsight, they probably could have cut out the first arc. Here's actually a small rewrite suggestion that I have for episode 9. I think episode 8 was completely flawless. Here's one thing I think could have made episode 9 from like a 9.9 to a 10. And that's if they actually showed Mon Mothma's husband and daughter. I am a little disappointed that it is not, they could still do it next week. It is not addressed how Mon feels about this in relation to her family. Like, imagine if they somehow suggested, like Bail suggests to Mon Mothma, that if you give this speech, not only is the Empire going to come after you, not only are they going to try and execute you, not only is the rebellion at stake if they do find you, but they're going to go after your family. They're going to go after your husband, who she doesn't like anyway, but they're also going to go after your daughter, the girl you sold away to marriage. Imagine if she knows that, and she makes the decision anyway, that like she's actually sacrificing her daughter. Like, she's risking her daughter's life to give this speech. I think that adds to the weight of her sacrifice. And that's probably the biggest theme of this season. It's sacrifice. You know, they talk about that with Cassian. We'll get to that in a sec. But like, what Mon Mothma has actually had to sacrifice for someone who's supposedly as wealthy and has as much power as her. She sacrificed just as much as almost anyone. So yeah, I think that would have been such a... Imagine if we actually like saw... What's her daughter's name? Lita. If we saw Lita get arrested. Like, that's something I can picture the Empire doing. It's like, oh yeah, Mon Mothma came out as a rebel. We're arresting her family. And she wasn't able to get them out. That's tough. Light Blinded Fool says, well, Perrin's a piece of shit, but yeah, I'd say might be nice to get Mon Mothma's take on her daughter next week to reinforce the weight of her decisions. I agree. I mean, I think that would have been such a great detail to add. But I mean, either way, it's like the speech was so powerful, and then the escape was so tense. And then they're tying it into Rebels. You know, it's like, I do kind of wish they showed Mon actually arrive on Yavin. And they could say that was the first time she was ever on Yavin. And maybe they could have filmed just like the weight of that moment, that a senator of a prominent system is now a official part of the rebellion. And like, I feel like that's kind of like when in, say, Game of Thrones, the king fights a battle with you. It just like, it motivates you. And seeing someone like Mon Mothma like be there for the rebels, I think would do so much for their morale. That could be a great scene. But we'll see Mon Mothma with the rebels next week. I think that could still just have been a great scene. Go See Field Club says, wait, the show isn't over? No, there's 3 more episodes next week. Jappel says, still more peak to be had. Yeah. It ain't over. It ain't over. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm really missing in terms of big story points. I mean, the big highlights were, of course, the massacre, Mon Mothma's escape and speech, Bix's message at the end to Cassian. I did kind of like... I'm a little mixed about K2SO's introduction. Like, Cassian's at first shooting K2, and then he gets ran over. And then he's like, oh, let's take the KEX unit back with us. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I don't... Like, you could convince me they only did that because we know Cassian needs K2SO eventually. So... It did feel a little forced, but like not entirely forced. I mean, it is still cool seeing K2SO. Colton says, if you had to rank this show amongst the movies, where would you rank it? I like to do individual seasons. I think it's more fair. Right now, I think as a whole, season 1 is better than season 2. I do think yesterday's arc was the best of Andor, though. Like, if I had to rank the 7 arcs of Andor, let's do this. Let's rank the 7 arcs of Andor. I should do a tier list tomorrow or next week of like the 8 arcs of Andor. So the 7 arcs of Andor, I would say number 1 was the Gorman Massacre arc, which was yesterday's episodes. Number 2, I would say, is the Narkina 5 prison escape. Number 3, I would say, is the Aldani heist. Number 4, I would say, was the ending of season 1. Number 5, I would say, was the first Ferrex arc in season 1. Number 6, I would say, was the first arc of season 2 and the second arc of season 2. Is 7. So, like, I think so far, season 2 has had the 2 worst arcs of the series and the best arc. Now, it's not like arcs 1 and 2 of season 2 were bad. I just think they were the weakest. But then arc 3 is the best arc of the series. What do you guys think about that? Luke says, but I feel like Mon and Perrin didn't hate each other. In the second arc, they worked together and shared their annoyance to have to go to so many parties. You said panties. Yeah, I don't think she hates Perrin, but she clearly doesn't love him. Christina says, what do you think about the Force Healer? It was interesting. You know, and this is how I love how Andor handles what could be fan service. Like, this moment could have been glorified into, like, they mentioned the Force. You know, it's like Cassian walks up to this woman, and what are you? And she's like, oh, I know, the Force. Music swells. Da-na-na-na-na-na. No, instead they're just walking, and Bix is like, oh yeah, we have a Force healer here. He's like, I don't care about no Force healer. Just like things like that make it feel more real, that they're not glorifying certain moments. And this is something that after watching Andor, it's like Andor glorifies every single moment from the entire movie. That's a reference to the original trilogy. And Andor just doesn't do that ever. It's like the only moment that was the only moments that are like really focused on are when characters are facing extreme trauma. That's what the show does so well. Velvet says, K2 meeting Cass during the Gorman Massacre adds something great to their relationship, a constant reminder of Imperial atrocities to Cassian. Oh, and I love the moment where Cyril sees the K2 droids hiding inside. Like, he realizes, oh, you know, their Empire's actually about to use these droids on innocent people. And I thought that was, like, again, just another really well done thing. One Random Victory says, I liked the season 2 second arc better than the season 1 first arc. Yeah, that's fair. I think I don't like to say the weakest, but I mean, there's no other way to say it. They are probably the weakest of the series, but they're still excellent. Supreme Leader says, Andor makes Revenge of the Sith more devastating to me. With how much they mention Palpatine, and you truly see what he has built and what his motives were. Haven't seen Rogue One in 2 years, can't wait. Yeah, I'm actually going to watch Rogue One like right after I finish next week's arcs. I haven't seen Rogue One in a few years either. Where you make a funny point about Revenge of the Sith, and I think where Revenge of the Sith does feel a little bit more tragic to me is how close people were to stopping the rise of the Empire. Sorry, how close this stopping the rise of the Empire was. Like, when you're watching the Gorman Massacre, it's so weird to connect these things, but it's true. When you're watching the Gorman Massacre, just know if Anakin didn't stop Mace Windu, this wouldn't be happening. I mean, it's true. So it's like, and this is what I love the most about Andor, the series as a whole. The original trilogy. Sorry. Riamos says, totally unrelated, but I just wanted to say you're insanely good looking, bro. You look nothing like I imagined. My face is in all my videos, but anyways, thank you. The best part about Andor for me, other than its themes about like sacrifice and its historical parallels, I think what I love the most about this show is the weight it adds to the cruelty of the Empire. Because in the original trilogy, we don't actually see how evil the Empire is. Yes, they blow up a planet. Obviously, that's evil. But that's so, like, surface-level evil. And this is what we talked about last week. Blowing up Alderaan is so surface-level evil. But outside of that, what truly evil things do we see the Empire do in the original trilogy? I mean, they're fighting a war. It's like, is them going after the Rebel Alliance evil? Obviously, we're on the side that the Rebel Alliance represents, But in war, yeah, you expect one side to try to destroy the other. And I hope it doesn't sound like I'm justifying the Empire here. I'm just saying we don't actually see many evil acts by the Empire in the original trilogy. In Rebels, we do see the evils of the Empire, but it's sugar-coated by Rebels being a kid's show. With Andor, it's like what we're seeing is truly horrific. Like, the planning of genocide with Gorman is so haunting. And then, of course, everything we saw in Season 1, mostly with Narkina 5 and how cruel those prisons are. Underrated, like, Disney Star Wars take. Disney Star Wars has done so much to make A New Hope even better. Now, we talk about how, like, the Clone Wars makes the prequels better, which is completely true. But, like, Rogue One and Andor and Rebels, the show, makes A New Hope better. It's like, you know how much time and storytelling they've devoted to the development of the Death Star? It's like the first Star Wars movie, we just see them blow up the Death Star, and it's, like, fun. And then we got Rogue One, where it's like, oh, these people all gave their lives to steal the plans so Luke could blow up the Death Star. It's like, oh, that's really cool. And now we got Andor, where we show the backstory of the people who gave their lives to get the plans to destroy the Death Star. It's like they're just repeatedly doubling down on how impactful destroying the Death Star actually was. And not even just, and Andor not just shows development for the people who sacrificed their lives to destroy the Death Star, it shows the cost of making the Death Star. I mean, Narkina 5 in Season 1, like, those people were imprisoned unjustly for unfairly long sentences because they wanted to build the Death Star. And here in Season 2, we know that the planning of a genocide of the Gorman people was to develop the Death Star. A super weapon. And then Luke blows it up. So it's like, it's just like, it makes the victory so much more. Knowing truly what happened, what was lost because of this. And also, it does make it feel like it was such a waste of life. You know, it's like all these people in Gorman died for a super weapon that was destroyed by, like, that. And hot take, like, Rogue One and Andor, for me, kind of diminishes Return of the Jedi a bit. It's like, you know how much time they're devoting narratively to the development of the Death Star? And then we blow it up in A New Hope? And then in Return of the Jedi, they're like, oh, there's a second Death Star and it's bigger now. It's like, really? Like, what atrocities happened behind the scenes to develop the second Death Star? You know, that's something that's always really irked me. I hate the second Death Star so much. But the movie's still great. R Units says, I would love them to develop more about the New Republic and the First Order. Me too, brother, me too. But, you know, Disney's too much of pussies to do that, because, you know, everyone hates the sequels. Crimson says, Andor and Rogue One add so much pain and suffering to the backstory of the Death Star. Narkina 5, Gorman, Jedha, Rogue One, Sacrifice. Alderaan's just the cherry on top. Literally, like, perfectly said, Crimson. It adds so much to the pain and suffering of the development of the Death Star, or the backstory of the Death Star. Tim O'Mahony says, the real world parallels right now is insane. Yeah, it really is. A Supreme Leader says, oh yeah, it's funny how when Andor first came out, it seemed unnecessary as a side story. But after all this time, we see how it elevates literally all of Star Wars prequels and originals. Exactly. Like, exactly. And that's what these shows should do, in some respect. I get the argument that the Star Wars franchise is so vast that some stories deserve to be told as just like isolated stories with hopefully good characters and good themes, and that's it. But I just fundamentally believe that when you're using a franchise like this, you owe it to not only respect what came before, but to try and elevate it in some respect. I get not every story does that, even some of the good ones. It's like The Mandalorian doesn't elevate any of the other movies. But I think Andor really does. And it's what separates it from everything else. You know, I'm like one of the few people in the world that doesn't hate the Obi-Wan show. I think that show elevates the original trilogy, even though the show is not great. Luxa says, this also helps explain how The second Death Star was built so much faster. The first one took so long to build because they had to create the infrastructure for it, prisons, genocide, planets, etc. Yeah, I mean, that's the theory. It still just does undermine it a little bit, and why I hate the second Death Star so much. But your point's not wrong. The Vid Game Junkie says, I'm all for stories that don't need to have the Skywalker family or even the Space Wizards. Yeah, me too. I've seen a lot of discussion lately about, like, what is Star Wars, you know? It's like, is Star Wars a kid show like Skeleton Crew? Or is it a drama like Andor? Or is it just like space adventure like the original films in The Mandalorian? And I don't want to box Star Wars into one thing. I think the beauty of Star Wars is that at any point, you can tell a story at any point in the timeline. Like, why can't Star Wars be so many things? I don't mind that Jar Jar Binks lives in the same universe as the Gorman Massacre. I don't. I think it's really cool. Star Wars is massive. Like 11 movies, like 12 shows, hundreds of books and comics, maybe 100 video games. Let Star Wars be a bunch of different things and see what works and what doesn't. Now, I have an issue with the execution of a lot of these things, but I like that Star Wars is really trying to be diverse in that respect. Rishav says, didn't Mon Mothma say that the Bothans died bringing in the Death Star 2 plans? Yeah, but I don't know if we've ever even like gotten that story, even in Legends. By the way, guys, I really appreciate all of you in the chat. We have 100 viewers. That's awesome. If you can, hit the like button if you're enjoying my analysis of the season. Because, I mean, this episode is great, and I love discussing with you guys. I mean, Andor Season 2 is truly next level. At least this arc. And I'm curious, like, how good next week's arc will be. How do you feel about that Force sister? I don't hate it or mind it. Like, it's interesting. Like, it's an interesting concept. I'm glad it's not shown with much fanfare. And I don't mind it at all. Colton James says, after Andor and yes, Skeleton Crew, it really sucks that we're just going back to the Mandoverse, which is the worst of both worlds. Yes and no. Like, I think the Mandoverse was at its best. I think the Mandalorian was at its best when it was just the Mandalorian. But then after they made it into the Mandoverse, I think is where the era struggles. Like, the Ahsoka show has really soured in my mind. Just because I don't think this story should be told on the small screen. At least, and if it were to, at least do it in, like, animation. Jappel says, Mandoverse was ruined the day they brought back Grogu. Yeah, the Book of Boba Fett did so much damage, it's surreal. I think that's just, like, the big problem with a lot of the Disney Star Wars shows on Disney+. It's like, so many of them have just done so much irreparable damage. It's like, the Book of Boba Fett destroyed the Mandoverse, the Acolyte, like, everyone hated, and it kind of nuked the entire High Republic era as well. And then the Obi-Wan show pissed off so many fans of the movies. Even though I mostly like the Obi-Wan show, like, I acknowledge it. Almost everyone hates it. The Vid Game Junkie says, yeah, I was hoping to really get my Bounty Hunter series from The Mandalorian, but then they turned it back to tie in with the Skywalkers, which is, I just don't really like that. Like, I don't mind it if they concluded the Mandalorian story and then, like, in a movie, he showed up to just help out. But, like, what they did with the Book of Boba Fett was just so bad. Anyways, we're talking about Andor. Let's talk about how great Andor is and not how everything else stinks. Colton James says, Filoni feels very George Lucas in the sense that he has great ideas that need reined in and also sucks at character writing. Yeah, Justin Baker has a good point. Is B2 going to be in the finale? I think so. I think the theory that they're going to have an epilogue with Bix laying the brick on Ferrix. It's kind of a tongue twister. Bix laying the brick on Ferrix, I think, could be like the epilogue for the show. Bix's message at the end. Oh, Cassian, we can be together. After we win, I'll find you. And they do win. How will Luthan die? Maybe he doesn't die. Now they're going to kill him. They have to kill him. There's no way they don't kill him. Fanged says, do you think Disney should move more Star Wars shows more to animation in order to explore a lot of different ideas without worrying about going so over budget like Andor. Yes. By the way, guys, sneak peek. My video coming out on Saturday is going to be a video essay on the future of Star Wars animation and why it's very bleak. And I kind of address some of your points you just had, Fanged. But yeah, my next video is going to be on Star Wars animation, and then next week I want to do an Age of Ultron review, and then Andor Season 2 review. Finley says, at the Goldman, if we do have a flash forward scene, imagine if Bix had a child, like with Cassian. I think that would be a little cliche, but if it's done right, it could be powerful. It's like, oh, look, here's little Cassian. And they have like the same actor of Kid Cassian from Arc 1. That'd be kind of funny. Wedge Odyssey says, to quote Saw, "Where are you, boy? You're here. You're not with the Book of Boba Fett anymore. You're here." Fang says, cuz of Tales of the Underworld. Kind of. Like, I haven't seen Tales of the Underworld yet, but I just hate the concept of that show so much. But let's talk about Andor. Golden says, it would be really interesting to have Dedra just die on the Death Star. All her sacrifice for nothing. Yeah, I really wonder what they're going to do with Dedra. I have no clue. Like, I really have no clue what next week's episodes are going to be about. Other than, like, some relation to the Death Star. No, we already know, right? How, again, I haven't seen Rogue One in a few years, so correct me if I'm wrong. But the reason the Rebel Alliance was tipped off was because Galen Erso leaked the message to Bodhi, who leaked the message to the Rebels. No, Bodhi leaked the message to that one guy that Cassian killed, right? I think so. So initially I was trying to think, oh, what if Dedra had like a redemption arc where she like leaked the info of the Death Star to the Rebels? But I was like, oh wait, that doesn't happen because we know how the information of the Death Star leaks to the Rebels. The video game junkie says, why am I getting a call? Dedra ends up in one of those analyst stations Hero was in. I mean, that would that be a fitting end? Like, what if Dedra doesn't die, and her end is that she just gets so severely demoted that her work is just meaningless now? But the thing is, she didn't fail. Like, she accomplished her goal on Gorman. Like, she got there to be a rebel uprising, and there was the massacre. So she succeeded. There's no reason. It would be strange to, like, demote her after she succeeded so nicely in this arc. Pete's Pile of Bricks says, at the Goldman, did you watch Retro Blasting's 3-hour video on the Rogue One work print? No. Colton James says, between Bix and B2, the moral lesson of Andor is to have a name that starts with B. Unless your name is Brasso. Are there any other B's? None on Aldani. Yeah, unless your name's Brasso. Rishav says, are you still going to make a separate video on the Bad Batch? I want to, but I don't think it's going to happen this month. It's just too big of a project. I need to rewatch all 3 seasons, and I kind of just want to make other videos. Like, at the end of the month, I'm going to do a Acolyte 1 year later video. Got a rage bait there. Bale, too. Tim says Bale. Although Bale technically survives the events of the series, he just gets blown up on his planet. Elijah says, Dedra should die. She will probably sacrifice herself after having an ideological breakdown. If she betrays the Empire, there's nothing left for her in the narrative or the galaxy. Dedra. That's funny, Dedra. Oh, my neck hurts. Fang says, a bit confused on Andor's morality sometimes, and I'm wondering if they are properly going to address that considering how much more Andor is like Luthan in Rogue One. In Rogue One, show version is a bit more hesitant still. Yeah, that is a good point. And I wonder if they'll show that in this last arc. Finley says, I wonder if we will see Saw Gerrera losing his leg. I don't think we will, especially since next week's arc takes place right before Rogue One. The time to do that would have been like this arc, but Saw was not in this arc. Supreme Leader says, I don't know how Andor is going to end. I want Bix to live on. Some resolve with Luthan and good setup to Rogue One. Oh, and Dedra should be depressed and suffer for the death of my goat, Cyril. Isn't it funny that so many people love Cyril, but he's supposed to represent like the most pathetic people in the Empire? It's really funny. I mean, that shows how well written the character is. Jappel says, maybe you were right about him killing Luthan, and that's what really hardens Cassian. Maybe. Tim O'Mahony says, Sought this time was probably on Geonosis. Oh, with Ezra. Did you guys catch the Rebels connection, by the way? Oh, I mentioned that earlier in the stream. Sorry, guys. It is really hot in my room, and I am sweating. Our unit says, I think replacing Bale, in my opinion, could be a signal from Disney that they are not afraid to recast instead of using deepfakes. Just a thought. I disagree with that, because I think that was probably Tony Gilroy's decision more than Disney's. Like, I still think Disney's fine doing CGI deepfakes, which is fine, but... Colin James says, theory that I don't believe, but would be really funny. Clea is Leia? And no. Supreme Leader, Andor is my second favorite gunslinger to Han Solo. Which one is better, actually? I mean, Cassian has an impressive resume. I mean, Han has like the Kessel Run and whatnot, but Cassian rescued a senator from the Imperial Senate chamber and lived. And he escaped. Cassian organized an uprising in a prison. He successfully led a heist to steal significant Imperial funds. He stole a TIE Avenger, probably the least impressive thing he's done. And he led the attack on Scarif to get the Death Star plans. Han stole coaxium from Kessel. And he cheap-shotted Vader during the Battle of Yavin. That's his legacy. There is a scene in a trailer where Dedra stands in Luthan's store and is holding a blaster. Maybe a Dedra-Luthan standoff? That could be interesting. You know, I've heard people say that before, but I don't think I've seen that trailer. So, I mean, I think you guys are right. Like, it happened. But I just haven't seen it. Oh, my neck hurts. Because this chair... My desk is, like, lower than I'm accustomed to. So I'm, like, I have to, like, hunch over a little bit. The Gorman Massacre was so heartbreaking. Yeah, it was. All right, guys, I am going to wrap up the stream in the next 2 minutes. So if you guys have any burning questions, let me know. I think what I want to do next week is next Wednesday, I'll do a live stream, obviously. Next Thursday, I might do a tier list for the Andor arcs, the 8 Andor arcs, and we can discuss them in depth. And then Friday, I won't do anything. And then next 2 Saturdays from now, I'll release my actual Season 2 video essay. Colton says, isn't Clea crying / screaming at Andor in the trailer? I did recognize that shot. Or, like, I did notice that. Like, I did rewatch the trailers after this arc to see what haven't we seen. And there's not much. There's, like, one shot of... like helmetless stormtroopers marching in a hallway. So I wonder what that's going to be a part of. I think it'd be really cool if they actually showed some of the actors from Rogue One. Like the actor of Bodhi, the actor for Galen Erso. I guess really just those two. Maybe Jin, maybe. But I don't see it. But that could be cool. Are you going to do a live stream on Sunday? Probably not, just because it's Mother's Day, but maybe. Real Alf says, hey, I just wanted to say thank you for the Revenge of the Sith video. I feel like I'm on an island sometimes for not loving the prequels much, and it was very refreshing to watch. I'm glad you appreciated my take. Thank you. Flashy Wolf says, you think Star Wars will ever be as intense or gripping as this in the future? I may doubt it for the coming finale of the Mandoverse. I mean, forever is a long time. Like, Star Wars will probably still have stories in 50 years. I think we'll get something as good as this again. Probably not within the next 5 years. Alex says, the only thing I wish we had this arc is Andor and Melshi actually meeting again. Yeah, that would have been really cool, but not at the top of my list. Supreme says, bro looks so curious with that right eyebrow and auto raise. Yeah, my eyebrows are not like aligned. Like, even this is like I'm just being normal right now, and this one is a little bit higher than this one. It's so funny. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up the stream. Thank you so much for this discussion of Andor. Truly surreal arc, next level storytelling from Lucasfilm. Bravo. For you basketball fans out there, let's go Knicks. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another stream. Don't forget tonight the Cloud Squad, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks again.